Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm the founder of Alzheimer Speaks Radio, website, Dementia Chats, and quite a few other platforms. And basically, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture around the world. And we believe by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia and services, products, and tools, we can go ahead and remove the stigma that is attached to memory loss. So many people are in the trenches dealing with this and don't feel like they have a place to go. And so we want to make that comfortable community setting. And our radio show is just one of the ways that we do that. At our core, we really, truly believe that collaboratively we can win this battle against dementia. And I know we're making a difference thanks to all of our supporters since ShareCare and Dr. Oz named us the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's disease. So I very much thank you all for helping us grow. And you do that in your advocacy just by liking us, sharing, tweeting, just spreading the word that we're out there. So again, those little things all add up, and I very, very much appreciate your support. I also want to encourage you, if you haven't checked out our website, alzheimerspeaks.com, go there, and again, you can then access all of our different platforms, the blog, the resource directory, the radio show, the YouTube channel, along with all of our free tools and so forth. So you'll be able to keep posted on what all we're up to. Our channel expert, Rick Phelps, who has early memory loss, might pop into the show. I'm never quite sure. Rick was diagnosed in June of 2010, and he's the founder of Memory People. And so if Rick joins us, I will definitely pull him into the conversation. But we would also like to hear from you. We love hearing from our listeners. So if you've signed in via the chat box and Facebook, feel free to use that to go ahead and pose a question or a comment to me. Or you can always call in live as well. And that number is 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. And I'd love to pull you into the conversation. And as soon as there's a break, that's when I'll go ahead and field those calls. So you don't have to wait for me to pose that to you. You know, if something hits you, go ahead, utilize the chat box or call in. I'd also like to just remind people that if you're looking for information and resources in your particular area, no matter where you are in the world, Alzheimer's Disease International, which is also known as ADI, can help you out. They are an organization of Alzheimer's associations around the world. They've got fascinating information, great reports, and again, they can hook you up in your particular area. And you can go to them just by going to www.alz.co.uk, and they would love to talk with you and see if they can point you in the right direction there. So with no further ado, let's get this show rocking and rolling. We've got a great show today. Today we have with us Harvard-trained neurologist Richard S. Isaacson, who's an MD. He currently serves as Associate Professor of Clinical Neurology and the Vice Chair of Education in the Department of Neurology at the University of Miami, the Miller School of Medicine. Prior to joining the University of Miami, he served as an associate medical director of the Wine Center for Alzheimer's disease and memory disorders in Mount Sinai. Dr. Isaacson specializes in Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, age-related memory loss, and other cognitive impairments. He's a board-certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, and he has widely appeared in the media, including CNN, NBC, CBS, and the Wall Street Journal, U.S. News, and the World Report, and so on. So we're just really thrilled to have him with us today. How are you doing today, Dr. Isaacson? Let me go ahead and pull you in to the conversation here.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. It's just really a pleasure to be on. And I wanted to thank you so much for really all you do. You've really, set the standard, and just the amount of information you share. I have a significant family history. I have 4 separate family members that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and education is power, knowledge is power, and I just appreciate all that you do to spread the word. So thanks for having me.
Well, as they say, it takes a village. I think, we're in this together, and none of us has all the answers, and to me, this is a disease where we really, truly need a toolbox, and everybody is different. Every person diagnosed and every care partner deals with this disease differently, and so it's not something that can just be, cookie cutter. And so I'm a firm believer on my 30-year journey with my mom, who's still living. This has been over half of my life, and I've just felt that we just need more support in a variety of it so that people can make their own choices for what's best for them. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about what you're up to. But before we get into that, why don't you give our audience just a little kind of snapshot of Alzheimer's disease in the U.S. today? That'll probably just give us a nice foundation for our talk.
Sure, of course. So, Alzheimer's disease is, in my opinion, it's not just a public health crisis, but I think it's a public health emergency. We have, based on a variety of statistics, over probably 5.5 million Americans currently in the United States with Alzheimer's. The problem is that we have an aging population. Baby boomers started turning 65 for the first time just in the last year or two. And, the epidemic is only going to worsen. In the year 2050, we're going to have, over 16 million cases. And I think another problem is not only do we have all these cases, but a lot of these cases, patients just aren't optimally treated. They're not even diagnosed. A lot of people say, oh, it's just normal. It's normal to forget things as you age. And there are some things that are normal as we age, but, Alzheimer's disease is nothing to be afraid of or ashamed of. We need to, really fight this from the get-go. And if anyone listening is knowing of a person that they love, a friend, a family member, or even themselves having any signs of, a little bit of memory glitches, or, maybe something isn't working like it should, I always advocate to see a qualified medical professional, because there's so much that we can do. And what the most recent evidence, the most recent research has shown is that the earlier you intervene, the earlier you attack this from every angle, as long as it's safe and grounded in evidence, that's when we can actually truly make the most benefit. So, what's going on with Alzheimer's today? This is a tough disease, but 2013 is literally, in my professional career, the most exciting year that I've seen on record for Alzheimer's. We're starting the first ever Alzheimer's prevention trials. Actually, the first person ever will get the treatment this month. I was just actually at the International Conference on Alzheimer's disease in Florence, just got back yesterday, and the excitement was in the air. I was presenting about my nutrition research, but there's so much out there from therapies, nutrition, drugs in the pipeline, lifestyle changes. I just think that Alzheimer's it's going to be a great year to fight this disease.
Well, that's exciting to hear. I too think that there are so many changes in the wind, and so many things just bubbling, and the conversations are getting much more comfortable, I think, in the public. And to me, that's huge, because this has been such a hidden disease, and one with so many stigmas, and not that we still don't have that battle, but the conversations are starting, and That's truly a blessing. Now, today, what I really wanted to focus on was, there's been so much talk about nutrition and Alzheimer's, and I know that that's a focus of your research. So I'm wondering if you can kind of give us a brief overview of some of the really exciting findings that our audience, would find interesting.
Sure. So I think the good news here is, a lot of people say you are what you eat. And what we're learning, and for the first time really ever in the last several years, we're truly learning that there is a difference, and basically there's an effect of diet and nutritional strategies in terms of Alzheimer's disease. For the first time ever in the last 2 years, there is evidence that shows that patients that already have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, if they change their diet in a very specific way, and these are high-quality studies, they can actually change their diet in a specific way and their memory may improve. When it comes to reducing risk for developing Alzheimer's or even Alzheimer's prevention, that was the title of my talk in Florence a couple days ago, we're really finding that very specific nutritional approaches have not only evidence, scientific research that back it, but also that are very safe and also have other health benefits too. So I think the most recent exciting findings, I think there are several. I think one of them is related to carbohydrates, and that when it comes to carbohydrates, less is more. There's studies out there that show that people that already have memory loss, if they can follow a very specific type of low carbohydrate diet, I won't go into too many details because it's not as straightforward as that, but you can actually potentially not only improve memory, but you can have other benefits too. You can lose some weight. You can make your insulin response better. That's a body's response to sugar, and even your blood sugar can actually be more well controlled.
Wow.
When it comes to the research it's not just for memory loss. This is a dietary changes will affect memory loss positively, but also other aspects of the body and of the other medical conditions too.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and there's no one magic thing that you can eat or drink to just suddenly take away memory loss or do something like that. But I put my patients on a very specific 9-week diet plan. These are my patients that I've been following for years in my clinic. I have them track what they eat. For example, the Mediterranean style diet probably has the most evidence for reducing risk of developing Alzheimer's or cognitive impairment. There's just so many things, very specific types of fish that are high in a specific type of fatty acid and omega-3 called DHA, dark cocoa powder. I love dark chocolate, sometimes too much, but there's even a recent study on dark cocoa powder. Adding that to your meal can actually not just improve memory loss, but blood pressure. Very specific types of berries, strawberries, blueberries. The list just goes on, and I could literally talk about this one topic probably for an hour or two, but I think the take-home point is that there is so much that we can do. 2-3 years ago, I didn't have the evidence to talk about this. Now I'm able to write an entire book on. It's called The Alzheimer's Diet, and basically it goes through exactly what my patients have the instructions that they've listened to, and how well they've done afterward. I think another really important brief point is that the problem also is that not all patients and not all individuals will respond the same way to specific dietary choices. I had an email within the last week or so that said, my wife and I ate the same things for 60 years, and my wife developed Alzheimer's and I didn't. I don't believe that diet helps or works. And my response to that is, I understand this is a terrible and this is a tough disease, but there's a genetic component to not only developing diseases, but it's a genetic component that basically tells a doctor or a patient if that person will respond to a specific therapy. So what I mean by this is people with specific genes or genetic code will respond preferentially to one therapy or another, and that's based on their DNA or their genetics. So this is a field called nutrigenomics or pharmacogenomics, meaning Mr. Jones may need to eat this, this, and this, but Mrs. Jones may need to eat that, that, and that, or have that drug versus that, because the genes will predict a therapeutic response to a management choice in Alzheimer's disease. It's a complicated topic, but that's hopefully a nice brief overview.
Wow. Now, you had mentioned, I'm going to back you up a little bit. You had mentioned the Mediterranean diet, and a lot of people talk about that. But can you, in a nutshell, just tell listeners, what is a Mediterranean diet? Because I think a lot of people hear it, but they don't really know what that means.
Right, that's a really good point. So the Mediterranean diet, and actually let me preface this with the Mediterranean style diet. And the Mediterranean style diet basically means not only dietary changes, but also active physical exercise. So the research that's been done actually looks at dietary changes plus an active physical lifestyle. And actually there's research that shows that the two of those, it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 3. So basically, you have a healthy diet, plus you exercise, that is going to be an exponentially higher benefit, or it synergizes together or works better together. So now let's get back to what are the specific types of food in this Mediterranean-style diet. And I think one of the key points here is vegetables, lots of vegetables. Green leafy vegetables, a good tip is if it's green, eat it. Fruits and vegetables as well. And you know, I've never been a kale sort of person until I started putting kale in my smoothies and my juices, and I said, wait a minute, kale's actually pretty good. So it may take a while to enjoy these green leafy vegetables, or these green different types of things, but I've learned how to. Lean proteins, fish, chicken, and turkey, low-fat yogurts and cheeses, nuts and seeds in moderation, meaning you know, a small handful of nuts and seeds is probably okay, but you know, a cup or two or three or multiple handfuls is probably not as good. Reducing red meat, reducing processed foods, kind of living off of a natural, healthy, living off the land, living off the green, healthy lifestyle, and also wine. You know, 1 glass of wine in women, red or white. Red may be better, and in men can probably have 1 to 2 glasses of wine, for example, each night with dinner. So this is the type of Mediterranean-style diet that really gets those healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, for example, are healthy brain-boosting fats that can actually be protective for the brain.
Wonderful. Thank you for going into some detail there. I think you gave a lot of wonderful pointers that people can go ahead and start incorporating into their lifestyle. And with St. Patty's Day coming, just because it's green doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fall into that category.
That's a good point. I was in Savannah, Georgia once, and they made the beer green. So okay, I guess you're right about that.
Yep, that's a pretty big thing up here in Minnesota. Everything turns green. Yeah. You know, and I think there's a run on the food coloring for about 2
That's the way it goes.
With that, yeah. So. And now you had also mentioned chocolate, which is a big favorite of people. If you can talk a little bit more about maybe the different types of chocolate and why certain types are better, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah. This is really important because, you know, I have, that's one of my major vices. You know, I love dark chocolate, and the problem with saying that dark chocolate is healthy is that when you have a dark chocolate bar or a chocolate bar, if you look at the ingredient list, it's sugar, and then butter, and then some more butter and more sugar, and then comes the dark cocoa or the dark chocolate. So I think what I teach my patients in my clinical practice is to read nutrition labels, and I think it's really essential to understand what you're putting into your body. When it comes to the evidence or the research on dark cocoa, the most recent research specifically shows that the dark cocoa powder itself is the thing that is probably the most brain boosting. You know, I love a dark chocolate bar, and dark chocolate, if you're going to have any chocolate whatsoever, the darker the cocoa is probably the better. The milk and the white chocolate, you may like it in terms of taste, but in terms of brain-boosting effects, I don't really think there are much because it's not, that with all the fat and the sugar and everything else in the chocolate bar, it's probably more negative than positive. But as my mom has taught me, everything in moderation. What I do is I add a very specific type of dark cocoa powder in my coffee. It's the same cocoa powder that was proven in the research studies. And even there's some evidence that shows caffeinated coffee in small to moderate amounts earlier in the day so that it doesn't interfere in sleep. I start my day with a small cup of coffee, about 4 to 6 ounces, with my dark cocoa, with instead of using sugar, and sugar's okay in moderation and in low amounts. I actually use agave. Agave is a type of sweetener. It's a natural sweetener that actually tastes very similar to sugar, but has a lower glycemic response. And glycemic, we won't get into this too much, but is basically the amount of a sugar or carbohydrate to maybe promote insulin or inflammation in the brain, but that's another topic. But when it comes to dark cocoa powder, I add it to the coffee, and I think that is kind of like a 2-for-1 in the morning.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Can you tell us, what is it about Alzheimer's that really affects the brain process? And, how are these things going to really help? I don't know if you can talk in simple language for us laymen.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll do the best I can, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the stuff that I talked about just this past weekend at the International Alzheimer's meeting in Italy. And when it comes to, I trained in Boston, and a lot of the people that were at this meeting, they lectured about something called amyloid. And I want to use the technical term amyloid because I do think that even people in the public should be familiar with this. It's a type of protein. It's a bad protein that gets stuck in the brain of patients with Alzheimer's. So amyloid is the most complicated word I'm going to use. I look at things a little bit differently, and I think that amyloid builds up, but there's something that happens before the amyloid builds up. We know that Alzheimer's disease starts in the brain 20 to 30 years before the onset of any symptoms. And that's very interesting because if we can figure out some sort of a therapy that can reduce whether it's amyloid or brain aging and start that therapy 20 to 30 years before, that's when we can truly talk about things like Alzheimer's prevention or secondary prevention. And that's really the philosophy that I take when I see patients for Alzheimer's prevention as well as for treatment. So going back to, why does this all happen in the brain? The brain uses two different types of fuels to produce energy, or basically to run the brain. So the most common thing that the brain will use to energize itself or to fuel itself is basically sugar. And sugar is the same thing as glucose. Glucose is more the technical term. Sugar is kind of the simple term. And I don't just mean sugar like putting sugar in a coffee, like white sugar or brown sugar or something like that, but any carbohydrate. Actually, bread, for example, pasta, all of that gets broken down by the body into a form of sugar, and that sugar is then used for the brain for fuel. That's its primary fuel source. Now, as the brain ages, and actually if you look at the research studies, 20 years before someone will even have any signs of Alzheimer's disease in terms of memory loss or anything else, the brain of that Alzheimer's patient or that pre-Alzheimer's patient will actually not be able to use that sugar like normal brains. Okay? So what we're finding, and some people have said, is Alzheimer's disease diabetes of the brain or something like that. And I'm not going to say that per se, but what I am going to say is that there's a lot of similarities between diabetes and Alzheimer's. And if you think about diabetes, you want to have a diet that's low in sugar and low in carbohydrate so that your insulin's a chemical reduced by the body to kind of break down sugar. And patients with diabetes, really trying to keep things as simple as possible, sometimes have to inject themselves with insulin because insulin can help break down that sugar. It's kind of a similar thing. In patients with Alzheimer's, I recommend low carbohydrate diets to basically protect the brain from inflammation. And I also recommend in patients that have already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease a new fuel for the brain or a different type of fuel that is different than sugar or glucose, and those are called ketones or ketone bodies. So the brain can only use two different things as a source of energy or fuel, and that's going to be sugar or glucose as well as ketone bodies, and that's great to be used when the glucose can't be used in an Alzheimer's brain. Hopefully that was a little bit technical, but hopefully as simple as I could explain it.
No, it's wonderful because, sometimes things just get so complicated and there's so much research going on, and people just need to know in simple terms, how does that apply to me? How can I digest this and make it work for me? So I do appreciate you breaking it down like that for us. Sure. Now, as far as the ketones go, you mentioned that they're a good alternative source, for food for the brain. Is there anything else that you wanted to add regarding that, or?
Yeah, so I think we're really learning that there's no, like as you said before, there's no one size fits all approach for Alzheimer's, and I'm a very peaceful person, but when it comes to Alzheimer's, I treat every patient as they're my own family member. My Uncle Bob, when he was diagnosed when I was in high school, not too long ago, 15, 20 years ago, there was no treatments, there was zero, not any drugs, not anything else. When my dad's cousin was diagnosed just 5 or 6 years ago, we've had made progress. And the philosophy that I use in my patient population as well as in my family is that we have to attack this like a war. You need the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, and my Uncle Bob was in the Navy, my dad was in the Coast Guard. So we have to use all of the branches and hit this from every angle. And I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with the drugs that are available for Alzheimer's disease. There are several FDA-approved drugs or medications that I think a lot of the doctors rely on. But I don't really think that if a doctor is just using drug therapy, I just don't think that is the most optimal therapy. I believe in a comprehensive approach, a multimodal approach grounded in evidence as well as basically balance and safety. And one of these approaches that I don't think has really caught as much attention until recently, because the evidence finally has really been proven, is that ketones can be an alternative source of food or fuel or energy for the brain. And there's a variety of ways to get ketones. For example, if you don't eat for 12 to 14 hours, your body will start to produce a very, very, very low level, a natural body production of ketones. Okay. The thing is that that amount of ketones is probably not enough to have a protective or therapeutic benefit in terms of memory. It may be a good thing to minimize carbohydrates and to possibly, use these naturally produced ketones, but there's other ways to really increase the amount of ketones in the brain and in the body, and there's actually a medical food that is now in a very large trial that's been studied in the past, and a medical food is basically something that you drink, and it's prescribed by a physician, and you shake it up and you drink it, and basically this is another way of providing these ketones as an alternative source of energy for the brain. So the way that I approach all of my Alzheimer's patients is I hit it from every angle. So I use the drugs, I use medical food, I use nutritional approaches, physical exercise, hobbies and musical activities. I hit this from every single angle, and I also educate the patient about all of these different options, and of course provide as much support and care for the caregiver as well. And I think this new area of ketones is really the newest kind of therapy option that really has been underutilized in the past.
Okay. So a lot of people I'm going to throw this out because I don't know, hear about protein shakes. Is that considered a medical food? Is that...
Okay, good question. So there's a lot of things that are over the counter that are kind of shakes or stuff for the brain. That would not be considered a medical food. That would be more of a dietary supplement. So maybe I can go through this for a minute because I think it is important. When it comes to the way that doctors see things and basically use different words to describe things. On one edge of the spectrum, we have something called drugs. An FDA-approved drug is basically something that goes through rigorous scientific research, multiple what they're called phase 3 trials. They're called clinical trials. And then the FDA is an organization, the Food and Drug Administration, will basically review the results of the clinical trials and then can approve something as a drug that's available by prescription. That's on one side of the spectrum. It's very rigorous scientific research proving efficacy or effectiveness, and safety. On the other end of the spectrum, we have something called supplements or nutraceuticals. A supplement is kind of the thing that you go to the grocery store or the drugstore, and if you look on the bottle, something like fish oil, for example. If you look on the bottle of fish oil, it says the FDA has not reviewed or approved this for the treatment or cure of any disease. Basically, supplements are safe enough as long as they're purchased from a reputable company, and that's really up to the company. But there's not really clear evidence or scientific research that there's enough for that company to make a claim to say, yes, this supplement works to cure or prevent or treat memory loss or Alzheimer's. What it may be is for support of memory function or to boost brain function or something like that. So that's a supplement, and that would be more of the, when you go and you look at different protein drinks in the store, that would be possibly one of those things. Now, in the middle is something called medical foods, and a medical food is really a term that a lot of physicians and I think a lot of patients and caregivers are not really as familiar with. A medical food is indicated for the clinical dietary management of some sort of an illness, and the technical term is the metabolic processes associated with a disease. So when it comes for Alzheimer's disease, the metabolic issue or the problem in the brain is that the brain can't use glucose as the primary fuel source. So what can it use? It can use ketone bodies. So the medical food that I was just talking about is actually a prescription medical food intended for the clinical dietary management of Alzheimer's disease. And in the studies that were done, it shown that in very specific types of patients that had this medical food by prescription, the name of the medical food is called Axona, Axona. Axona, the technical term, what it's made up of is it's called medium chain triglycerides. For the listeners, you can just refer to it as Axona. But Axona basically addresses the brain's problem in terms of using glucose or sugar as a primary fuel source, and it works collaboratively with the other therapeutic options that are out there for Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, interesting. Now, is that something that people can use at home then? I'm assuming that you can prescribe, it has to be prescribed, so it could be used if someone's living at home or in a care center?
Yes, so basically any physician can prescribe Axona, and Axona is, why is it available by prescription? Because it's basically, it's always best to use these types of therapies under the supervision of a treating physician. While I do recommend a variety of therapies, I always advocate that a treating physician should be involved, and I think it's always safer to have a treating physician look through this. And basically, any person with Alzheimer's disease can be prescribed, for example, in patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. That's the way the clinical studies have been done. And a physician may then say, okay, well, we'll try this medical food. I'm going to give you a prescription. The key is that you have to start this therapy in a very low dose and increase it very slowly over time. And this is a way to get the body used to digesting the Axona or the ketones, and that way it can address the problem and basically provide the brain with an alternative energy source. And this is a mechanism or a way to think about this disease, the therapeutics anyway, in a very different sense than some of the drugs or some of the other things.
Okay. Now, when you said you mix it up and it's a liquid, can you tell people, what it tastes like, or can you mix it with different types of foods to make it more palatable, or is it just something that everybody wants to chug down?
Gotcha. I always recommend the same thing, and I learned this by reading basically there are instructions that come. For example, there's two ways to get Axona, and one way is to get it via a sample kit. And so a lot of doctors' offices out there will have samples, and in the sample kit, basically each day you'll start off with a lower dose. For the first 2 days, you start off with one very small. They're 10-gram packets, and what I always recommend is no matter how small or large the dose, to mix the Axona powder. Basically, you start off with 10 grams each day, and then slowly you increase over a week to the full 40-gram packets. And what I recommend to my patients and their caregivers is to start low and go slow, and that's really the take-home point. Just like a lot of the drugs that are used, for example, donepezil or even the patch that's out there, those medications are usually started at a low dose And then over time, after a month or two, are increased to a higher dose as tolerated, and those are usually, for example, taken with food. And this Axona therapy is really the same thing. Axona should be basically mixed, and you can mix it in water. And if you mix it in water, it has somewhat of more of a vanilla-y flavor. I actually usually recommend my patients mix it with Boost. I like Boost because, for example, there's a version of Boost called Calorie Smart, and Boost Calorie Smart is very low sugar and low carbohydrate. So it also helps to basically not just give a little bit of an extra food source to make the absorption of Axona more tolerable, but it's also low on the carbohydrate scale, so in some ways that can be more beneficial on the brain. So what I recommend is I have my patients mix the packet of Axona, and the take-home point here is you have to first pour the liquid in and then pour the powder, and then you shake it up. And just like James Bond said, shaken, not stirred. And you shake it up in a shaker cup, and you mix the Boost or skim milk or whatever else you want to use, plus the Axona, shaken, not stirred, and you have to sip it slowly after a big meal, either breakfast or lunch, whichever meal is bigger, and sip it slowly over 20 to 30 minutes to make sure that you're giving the body the best chance at tolerating it without any side effects or, without getting basically a stomach ache or bloating or anything like that. And as long as my patients follow these very specific instructions, sip it slowly after a big meal, breakfast or lunch, whichever meal is bigger, shaken, not stirred, and shake it in the shaker cup, and start low and go slow. After a week, most patients that I give this to are able to tolerate Axona well, and then those people, and actually in the research actually shows that those patients that are able to be compliant with their dosages, those patients are actually the most likely to benefit. So it's all about education, and I think with Alzheimer's disease, this is a new therapy, and most doctors out there aren't as familiar with using, a food-type therapy, a medical food-type therapy. So I think a lot of doctors sometimes don't give these types of very detailed instructions to their patients. With all of my patients, I give a very detailed handout and other, paragraphs of information about how this stuff works, because that's all I do. 100% of my time is Alzheimer's. In the packages, whether it's an Axona sample or it's in the box that you get at the pharmacy, there are pretty detailed instructions, and I would just really strongly advocate for any patient or caregiver that's trying this for their loved one, for a patient with Alzheimer's, that they read the instructions carefully, start low and go slow, and sip it slowly after a big meal.
So would this be like an 8-ounce glass of?
Yeah. Basically, basically, you can use 4 to 6 to 8 ounces. I usually recommend around 6 ounces or so. And if you mix the powder in a 6-ounce container and then shake it up and then sip it slowly, that usually works. For example, Boost is 8 ounces. So since Boost is 8 ounces and it comes conveniently packaged, adding the Boost, I have a patient actually, a real good guy. His wife and I have been doing everything we can for her husband, and he's actually doing really well. He loves chocolate like I do, and there's a Boost version of Calorie Smart that's a rich chocolate flavored. It's 8 ounces, and he adds the Axona powder to the Boost, and then shakes it up in the shaker cup, and it really works well with the 8 ounces. Some people tolerate it just as well in 4 to 6 ounces of some sort of a liquid, whether it's water or something else. What he does actually, and this is helpful, is after he shakes it up and mixes it, he puts a little bit of ice in the mixture. And ice is actually helpful to slow down digestion, and if you can slow down digestion a little bit, it also helps with tolerating, because if you drink Axona too quickly, or if you don't have it with a big meal, it can cause stomach upset, and things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, even some bloating, and these are common side effects, not just with Axona, but also with the FDA-approved drugs, especially when you don't take them as directed. So it's really important for people to take this the right way and read and get educated in the package insert in the box.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you what some of the side effects might be, and so I like that you're saying, start low and you kind of grow with it, and then, take your time. You were very specific in terms of, after meal, and all of those things make a huge, huge difference in terms of how your body is going to respond. And sometimes we forget how important those basic directions are in terms of, how our body's going to react to something. And so you've got some great little catchy phrases that can help point people in a good direction and make it simple to understand. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, there's also a therapeutic trial or a clinical trial going on, isn't there, that people can get involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is actually how I kind of got involved in learning more about this. I'll give you a brief overview. Anytime a medical food or any product is basically going to go through the process of trying to become a drug, an FDA-approved drug. For example, there's a type of fish oil. It's a fish oil called Lovasa, and in the past, fish oil was available as a supplement or a nutraceutical, and you can buy it, and you can still buy it in over the counter. There was a company, and they took this fish oil, and they actually did a rigorous scientific clinical trial, and then it did so well, and it was safe, so it's now an FDA-approved drug, and it's a type of fish oil that can be prescribed just like a drug. It just means that it's the same substance, but it was just proven more rigorously, and that's exactly what the medical food Axona is currently basically doing. They have a very large clinical trial. And if you go to the website clinicaltrials.gov, you can search for it. I think you may have had even a link on your website too, which is helpful. And basically, if people are interested in getting into this clinical trial, basically what happens is they will patients will be enrolled, and they will either get Axona, which actually it's kind of it's a slightly different version of Axona, and then this version will be tested in people with different types of genes, and they will look at genetics, and they will try to figure out, does Axona work preferentially in one gene versus the other? And right now that's what the preliminary evidence suggests in a subgroup analysis, that Axona is preferentially effective in patients that do not have one of those genes that can help increase the risk of Alzheimer's, called ApoE4. And the reason how I really learned so much about Axona and really understood all this is, since my research is in nutrition, the company actually called me and asked me to kind of discuss this with the FDA, and basically the company is doing something called an investigational new drug application, and that's why they're doing the clinical trial. And I was on the phone with the FDA and basically had to kind of give my expertise or scientific judgment or an overview about the product and kind of really try to take the next steps towards becoming an FDA-approved drug. So that's how I consulted for the company, and really truly got to review the data and learned a lot more. So when it comes to the clinical trial, if someone is interested in getting more information about this, I definitely advocate for going to clinicaltrials.gov and learning more. It's actually the name of the name of the medical food is called Axona, but the name of the agent in the clinical trial is called AC, like Apple Charlie, AC1204, and basically you can actually check out I think I saw it posted on your website, as well as clinicaltrials.gov, and do a search for it. And there's clinical trial centers all over the country. I think they'll be enrolling something like 480 patients all throughout the country, and that clinical trial literally got started maybe about a week or two ago. So it's exciting. It's one of the many clinical trials that are going on, and again, just evidence that we're really making tremendous strides in progress.
Well, that's very exciting. And with this clinical trial, is it a deal where some will get the real thing and some will get a placebo, or will everybody be getting it so that they can analyze these genes? But is it a double-blind or?
Exactly. So the technical term is going to be, it's called a randomized double-blind. It's a randomized placebo-controlled double-blind study. What does this mean in English? Well, randomized means you have a 50-50 chance of getting the real thing or not. Placebo means that the people that don't get the real thing, the Axona, that's AC1204, will actually get a placebo. Basically, it tastes similar, but it doesn't have the active ingredients. Basically, no one knows what you're getting, the real stuff or the placebo, the not real stuff. So there's two different ways to try to, for example, if someone wants to get involved in a clinical trial, and this is a great way to get the product for free, for example, that would be one way to do it. If someone says, you know what, I'm going to ask my doctor because, there's a type of Axona that's out right now. The two types of the Axona that's in the clinical trial is very similar to the Axona that's on the market right now, but they are not the same, but they are very similar. But if someone decides that they want to try Axona and they want to ask their doctor about it, doctors currently can prescribe Axona as a medical food, and that's one way to do it. Otherwise, if someone says, you know what, I'd rather do it in a clinical trial and try a different version of Axona, but although they're very similar, then they can also learn more about the clinical trial, and there's sites, I think 60 sites all around the United States. Okay,
wonderful. And is this covered by medical assistance or Medicare or health insurance at all? Do you know, because that's always a concern with people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's so hard to balance cost. These medicines and these, the drugs out there with the copays and with some of them are generic, but others aren't. And plus, when you're adding in a medical food and a supplement and all these other things, the costs are, something that we all have to be mindful of. I can just give you, I can't give you the exact answers because I'm not a company kind of person, but I can tell you from my medical experience, from my patients, what they tell me. There's a mail order way to get it. It's $69 a month through the mail order, and they ship it to the person for free. So that's helpful. The person does not have to go to the pharmacy or have to worry about that. And basically, you can go to their website, I think, or in the sample kit. There's actually something that my patients can fill out, and the doctor's office can fax it. So for $69 a month, the company or some company or somewhere will send it over. It's also available in pharmacies. Online, what my patients have done is gone on the about-axona.com website, and on there's a financial assistance area. One of them has a 20% off coupon, so you can pick it up at the pharmacy, use the 20% off coupon, and save some money that way. The other thing is that there is a financial assistance program, I believe, if someone does not have enough funds to pay for it. I think there's a way to apply for assistance of some sort. I don't, again, have all the details about that. And otherwise, in my patients, in terms of insurance covered, I would say it's very variable. I'm in Florida, and I'm just going to give a general, probably 40% of insurance companies in Florida, there's just so many different types of insurance companies and different policies and everything else. I would say 40% of the time it's covered in some way. In the other 60% of the time, when it's not covered, this is the way, potentially it could cost $69 a month. For me, in my clinical practice, listen, I understand money's important, and I'm not trying to waste anyone's money. I'm trying to do the best that I can for my patients, and like I would to my family members, I'm going to recommend these types of things. And, based on a cost-benefit analysis, I just think there's nothing more important than doing everything you can. So I do think that the cost is worth it. Some of these drugs can cost up to $300 a month if you don't have insurance. So this is a much less expensive. I know supplements can cost easily $50 to $100 a month, depending on which supplement is purchased. And some of the supplements that are bought in the pharmacies or grocery stores or whatever, or the health food stores, have much less evidence, if let alone any evidence. And believe me, I take a very aggressive approach and a very comprehensive approach, a multi-mode, 20-step treatment plan and 10-step, at least probably 15-step now, prevention plan. And yes, these things cost money, but I do think that the cost versus benefit is definitely in favor of using these therapies.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you going into all the various options, because that is something that people, it weighs on their mind, especially, with the status of things nowadays. People are just trying to survive, and so anything helps. And $69 a month, some of these pills are, way more than that individually and stuff. And so I just hear all these horror stories of people really struggling to try to help and do the right thing, but trying to figure out balance, with it as well. So I do want to talk about your book. Actually, you have written two books. And we definitely need to cover both of those if you've got time to do so.
Yeah, sure. So the book that came out last year in 2012, it's still pretty recent. It was updated as of, I believe, July of 2012, so it's still very recent, actually, still somewhat hot off the press. It's called Alzheimer's Treatment, Alzheimer's Prevention, A Patient and Family Guide. If you want more information, you can Google it or go to the website. The website's called theadplan.com, THEADPLAN, theadplan.com. And that was really the book that I wrote literally for my patients. And what I was doing is I was typing out so many recommendations for my patients. I would print out sometimes 20 to 30 pages at the printer that it got to the point where I said, you know what? I think I need to put this in a book form because I'm breaking the printer cartridges too frequently. So basically, it's exactly what I tell. It's written in large. It's large print. It's basically me talking. It's not very technical. It's basically going through. It's a question and answer format of kind of the way that I look at Alzheimer's. What are the drugs? What are the this? What types of food? What types of that? And it's basically the 30 most common questions that I get asked as an Alzheimer's specialist by my patients and their caregivers. And it basically just is me talking about, me speaking in words on a paper about how I would address Alzheimer's disease using this multimodal or comprehensive approach. Which types of mental activities are important? Does Sudoku help or not? Answering those very common questions. What types of music therapies and music activity programs may help? Things like that. Going into the details, the very specific details about the drugs and about the medical food and supplements and how to take them and how to be safe when taking them and the cost, and I put all the cost information in there too and discussed the things. So that was the first book. And the most recent book, really, really excited about. I literally just had no idea that people would just be so interested in this book, and I'm so glad. But the newest book is called The Alzheimer's Diet, a step-by-step nutritional approach at memory loss prevention and treatment. And this book just came out a few months ago, and I am just floored and really excited. I mean, people are literally reading this book and absolutely changing the way they look at food. And, I think the data and the research shows that, if someone makes a very small incremental change just to try to make each meal a little bit brain healthier, and that's what the book goes through. It goes through all the research, puts basically the same plan that I use for my patients, the 9-week progressive diet plan that I put my patients on. It not only includes different foods and different types of foods and tracking different carbohydrate levels, but also includes things like using a medical food in people that already have Alzheimer's versus there's a whole chapters in the back about Alzheimer's treatment. The beginning is more applicable to both treatment and prevention, reducing risk, and also talks about how certain people with certain genes may respond better to different therapies. So I think the book, The Alzheimer's Diet, has been really exciting. I wrote it with my colleague and close colleague, Dr. Christopher Ochner. He's a nutrition expert. He was at Columbia University in New York. Now he's over at Mount Sinai. And it's just really been a lot of fun, and just gotten some very rewarding feedback about it. So those are the two books, and they're written for patients and caregivers and pretty easy to read, and if anyone's interested in checking them out and have feedback on them, please let us know. We'd love to hear feedback too.
Well, great. And I do want to throw out to the audience, if anybody has a question for Dr. Isaacson, again, please feel free to use your chat box, or you can call in live to the show at 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. Well, this has just been a fascinating discussion, and as you said, we've got the link on Blog Talk Radio for the clinical trial, so you can just click on that. Same to get to your website, and then if people want to go ahead and purchase those books as well. Try to make it real easy, and then I'll be doing up a blog with the link of the archive with the show, and we'll have all those connections for you as well. So, yeah, very, very interesting. Lots of fun things going on, and you shared it in such simple terms for all of us to be able to digest, which is again just so wonderful. I think this, with the medical foods, it's not something that people hear about. I know I didn't really even know that it existed, and I've been on this journey with my mom for 30 years, but I didn't really understand it,
I'm going to be honest with you. I got a phone call from a patient of mine about 4.5 years ago. Her husband actually got me. I'm a big Yankee fan. Maybe you're a Minnesota Twins fan. We have a little bit of a rivalry, but I have a Yankee Stadium thing in my office that I'm looking at right now. And when his wife called me about this, I had heard about medical foods a while. I couldn't even give you the definition of a medical food, and this was just 4 or 5, probably 5 years ago. So doctors just aren't even aware. Patients, caregivers aren't aware, and I think it's really great that finally not only the international community. I lectured on this literally 2 days ago and 3 days ago, and I think we're really finally making progress to show that medical foods are a worthwhile therapeutic option that needs to be considered, as well as nutrition and all these really safe as well as effective nutritional approaches.
Well, and I think people are getting much more conscious, and I think as this bubble, approaches, and the numbers keep growing, people realize we're not going to have a cure. There's not going to be this magic pill, probably in our lifetime, or it might be towards the very end, even though research is plugging along with things, and we need alternatives. And people are really, they're looking at this holistic approach in terms of what is it am I putting in my body, and I think your book is fantastic. I think the medical food angle is another thing. The exercise, all of those pieces, people are really starting to take seriously because they're seeing more and more that younger people, this isn't an old person's disease anymore, and that our bodies are changing much earlier than we even recognize. Or will most of the time admit that it's going on, and sometimes we're not even aware. But through some of the research that's being done and the testing, and that there are things that are showing, we can battle this. So I think it's really time to become more dementia friendly. People want to get more educated. They know that if they haven't been touched, they will be, because it's just a numbers game, and the numbers are just going up. So.
Yeah,
well, it doesn't
absolutely.
look like we have any questions from our audience, but again, I just can't thank you enough for all the wonderful information that you shared with us, and this hour has just blown by. It always does, though. I'm always just fascinated on how these topics are so intriguing and give us such great information. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, just thank you again for not only spreading the information about nutrition and medical foods, but just all that you do. Your footprint on this disease is really just critical and essential, and I appreciate it because it helps my patients learn. But I think, this disease is hard. This disease is like, hard is not even a good enough word. It's a disease that affects not just the patient, the entire family, and I think we need to have hope. There is no one magic pill. There's no one magic patch. There's no one magic drink. There's no one magic anything that's going to stop this disease dead in its tracks just yet. In the future, hopefully, but not for at least 10, 15, 20 years. In that time, this multimodal therapeutic approach balancing safety with potential for benefit is just truly what I really believe where we need to be. And I absolutely believe that in 2013 and in the next few years, there's absolutely more hope now than ever for Alzheimer's. I think we need to keep up the fight. We need to stay educated, stay informed, and really just keep battling. And I think this is a fight we can win. It's going to take a little time, but we will be able to make great progress.
I agree. I think, and I'm sure you're aware, over in the UK, they're doing what's called dementia-friendly communities and businesses over there, and they're just getting such a great response of people getting educated and becoming advocates and just kind of shining stars for the disease. And their goal, I believe, is to get 1 million friends, and those are all people that are just going to be walking and talking, dementia, and having their eyes and ears open for how do we better serve, how do we allow people to live better lives. And for myself, I'm rolling out what I call dementia-friendly businesses and communities campaign, where people can become a dementia star, and that's similar to what they're doing over there. But with all the different platforms that I have now, it allows people to position themselves, all types of businesses. throughout my platform so that people can find them. Because for me as a caregiver, that was one of my biggest struggles was, I didn't even know what resources were available or what I needed. And people need to be able to make choice, and they have to be able to find things in a simpler fashion. So the collaborative resource directory that I built on my website, too, is so that people can input and share information. Because, like you said, we can't do this alone. This is not a disease of one. This is a disease that affects everybody a little bit different, and it's not just the person diagnosed. It's, like you said, the family, the friends, the coworkers, the communities. It impacts us all, and we just have to get, much more knowledge-based and more compassionate regarding this disease because, these individuals are so much more than a disease. But sometimes I think they feel like they're put in a box, and that's how people look at them, as the disease. And, if someone's got heart disease or diabetes or cancer, we don't look at them just as a disease, and that really has to change. So many good ways to be able to switch things up. So, we will definitely push people to your website. Again, that's www.the and that's appledogplan.com. And we've got the link for the clinical trial as well, and then have highlighted both of those books. So we'd love people to read those and get back to you with their feedback as well, and see what their thoughts are. So thank you again so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to help spread all this information that people can actively use, literally starting today, to help better their lives and memory.
Yep, that is absolutely fantastic. I do want to remind people that this afternoon I will be doing a Dementia Chats webinar. Again, that is a free webinar. We're going to be interviewing Harry Urban and Michael Ellenborgen, and they're going to be talking about advocacy and what they're doing. Both of these men live with the disease, and it'll be a very fun hour, I'm sure, that will fly by as well, as it always does. And with these webinars, again, you can go to the blog to get the link on that, which is just at www.alzheimerspeaks.com. And come and join us, join the conversation. And people are using these webinars. I've been told families are using them for family kind of get-togethers just to learn more about the disease. Doctors are watching them, just fascinated what they're learning from the patients. People are using them for support groups and training. And again, all it is an informal conversation with people that are actually living with this disease. Our next show is coming up. I'm going to be taking just a week off here, but we've got plenty of shows for you to listen to in the archives. But on the 5th of April, I'm going to have Kay Fox on, and we are going to be talking about transgender needs. And then on March 26th, I'm also going to have Gary Glazner with Art and Poetry, which will be just a fascinating show. And then on the 29th, at the very end of the month, we're going to have Us Against Alzheimer's on. And they are just such a massive movement out there, trying to pull people together and help with research and again, education as well. So thank you all for being with us. Again, if you enjoyed the show, we would appreciate it if you like us on Facebook and tweet us and share it with your friends, because, again, that's a way that you can be an advocate by just pushing a couple of buttons. If you don't have time to do what I'm doing, that's okay. There's so many different levels in terms of spreading the word. So, again, thank you so much. And Dr. Isaacson, thank you for all you're doing. And people, don't forget to go to his website, theadplan.com. Till the next time, we will talk soon. Bye now.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer's Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.